All right, let's talk about assignment number 7. So the last 2 weeks we've been working on rhetorical analysis and using some text as some building blocks to talk about what exactly is a rhetorical analysis and what does it require you to do. So from Nancy Mayer's essay Disability, David McCullough's You're Not Special speech, the Google slides I provided on the mayor's text. Last week, the work on David Sedaris and Pamela Paul, having you explore exactly what it takes to do a rhetorical analysis so that for assignment 7, you have to write one. And you get to choose from 2 texts that you've already had some experience and exposure to. So that's the goal. So you have some comfort level because I've, in a way, forced you to read these texts and do something with them already. So you can choose, do you want to write the rhetorical analysis about David McCullough Jr.'s speech or Pamela Paul's essay, article, Have Some Sympathy? For this essay, you will examine a single text. So it's got to be on McCullough Jr., his You're Not Special speech or Pamela Paul's Have Some Sympathy article, essay. And you will consider the audience, the rhetorical choices. That would be like the rhetorical techniques handout, the foundational 4, which includes audience, but purpose, logical and emotional appeals, their credibility. What is their credibility? Is that based on their background, their use of more knowledgeable others, or a combination of the 2? Logical and emotional appeals, facts and statistics, loaded words, stuff like that. If you need help with any of that, go back and take a look at the Nancy Mayer's Google slides, because I walk you through all of those. Take a look at the rhetorical techniques handout. Also, go back to last week's work with Pamela Paul's essay, where you had to go through 10 questions to kind of deconstruct her article and then put it back together into a valid rhetorical analysis thesis statement for number 10. So I hope you can see what you did the last 2 weeks was building towards this, not just the skills and the understanding of a rhetorical analysis, but building some of the pieces that you can use to then write on a specific text that you've already had some exposure to and broke down. That's for a reason. I was trying to provide you with those building blocks that would lead you towards writing this essay. Not exactly rough drafting it, that's what you're going to do this week, but providing you with some of the steps and the tools ahead of time so that you don't feel like you're, to increase your comfort level with writing the essay. What does this text accomplish? What strategies does the author use to accomplish this goal? Is the text successful in reaching the intended audience and goal? It is effective to quote from the text you're analyzing, so you have to make a works cited entry. So, number 1, you've already had some exposure to both those texts. You've already done some work of a rhetorical analysis for both those texts. Pick one, obviously, that you feel more comfortable with or feel like you know it better, and then start drafting the essay. But one thing that I'll say is go back and look at the Nancy Mayer slides and how I walk you through kind of deconstructing what she did rhetorically, leading you to a fruitful and sophisticated thesis statement for a rhetorical analysis essay if somebody was writing it on Nancy Mayer's essay. You're going to do that for the McCullough Jr. or the Pamela Paul text. So your introduction should have an engaging opener, provide some background on the writer and the article, and then present a solid rhetorical analysis thesis statement. If you do the Pamela Paul essay, you already have it. Number 10 from last week. Take a look at my comments. So did you do it correctly? Did you not do it correctly? If you did, you have it. Now, if you're writing about the McCullough Jr. text, just take that schematic, take out her name, plug in his, take out her essay article title, plug in his speech title, and then fill it out. And you have that. That is a good fill in the blank thesis schematic that you can use to make sure that you have a viable rhetorical analysis thesis statement. And then you're going to make the argument. But remember, you're not summarizing. Your lens is rhetorical analysis. So walk the reader through McCullough Jr.'s or Pamela Paul's use of logical appeals, emotional appeals, hypophora, anaphora, rhetorical questions, any of the things that are on those rhetorical techniques. Who is their audience? What is their purpose? Do they achieve that purpose through these rhetorical techniques? How effective are they in reaching the audience? Then you're going to have to, because you're going to have to quote from the McCullough Jr. speech or the Pamela Paul essay. I give you inside the module an example of a sample works cited entry for an online magazine newspaper article, because if you scroll to the bottom of the module, I give you the link to the Pamela Paul article. I give you the link to the David McCullough Jr. article that gives his speech. That's going to help you make the works cited entry. So you can see the Cornelia Dean example that I give. That is a New York Times article. So what you're doing is you're taking that example and then you're modeling that, you're using that as a model to turn the Pamela Paul essay into a works cited entry, turn the David McCullough Jr. article into a works cited entry, depending on which one you use. So if we look, author's last name, comma, first name, period. Punctuation is important in the works cited entry. In quotation marks, put the title of the article. Period goes inside the quotation marks. Italicize the title of the online newspaper or magazine. Pamela Paul, New York Times. For David McCullough Jr., it's Time magazine. Give the date of publication, but you write it international, which means the date, the month, the year. And what's not seen in the example, because it's May, if it's a longer month name, you abbreviate it. So when you're talking about July, you just write out July, but when you get to August, AUG period. September, SEPT period. So make sure you do that after the year, comma, and then the web URL. The reason I'm giving you the web URL down at the bottom for the New York Times and the Time magazine, depending on which one that you use. I explain what a hanging indent is, and I even give you instructions on how to do it in a Google Doc or Microsoft Word so that your formatting stays consistent when you upload it. Then I give you examples on how to quote. It's called a parenthetical citation because it involves parentheses and a citing. You're citing the source, right? Inside the essay, some people call it an in-text citation or a parenthetical citation. And what that does is flag to the reader, you're providing me with the source. I can then run my finger down the works cited page and look for, if you notice, I give the example for the Cornelia Dean example that I provide for the works cited entry. It's just her last name, Dean, in parentheses and then a period. So then I would skim the works cited page looking for Dean, because what's the first thing that you have? Author's last name, so Dean. And then I can look it up. I can click on the link. It takes me to the source. I can find your quote, or I can verify that the source is valid. That's how it works. But you don't always want to just do a parenthetical citation, especially the first time you quote. You want to provide some background contextual information for the credibility of the writer so that you can build your own credibility. And in this case, I give an example doing some light research on Cordelia Dean to find that she's a science writer for the New York Times, and she also lectures at the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences at Harvard. So is it effective to plop a quote, put a parenthetical citation? Sometimes, not all the time, especially not the first time. You could do something like this: Cornelia Dean, comma, a science writer for the New York Times and lecturer at Harvard School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, comma, notes that, and then I give the quote. What does that tell the reader? She's a science writer for the New York Times, which is a reputable, credible publication that has journalistic guidelines. So she must know what she's talking about. She can write well about science topics, but she's also a lecturer at Harvard in the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. So we know that Harvard is considered an Ivy League school. You have to have good credentials, we assume, to teach there. And so she's probably a reputable source. That's a lot different than, quote, Dean, correct? So giving some contextual background and some contextual background information establishes that credibility so that the reader doesn't have to go search for it. Oftentimes they won't, and it might leave them thinking, well, why do I care what Cornelia Cornelia Dean says. And that's it. So here's the thing. You might never have heard of a rhetorical analysis before we transitioned from the narrative essay into a rhetorical analysis, but by the last 2 weeks, you working with these texts, getting my feedback, looking at my comments, watching these videos, you should really be comfortable now making that transition to write your own rhetorical analysis, especially because McCullough Jr. speech and Pamela Paul's article, you've already worked with. You've already broken them down for some of the pieces of the rhetorical analysis you're now going to use to write your own essay, your own analysis of their rhetoric. So if you have any questions or concerns, raise your hand. Otherwise, I really look forward to reading your work on this. So I really feel like this is an opportunity for you to up the sophistication of your writing, and I'm really excited to see what you guys do here. So have a good week.